Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another episode of TTT. Joining me today.
So, Anyaugo.
You got Mohammed, Lawan.
Today we're going to be talking, breaking down 3 segments, talking about very popular Netflix series that happened. That we just watched a couple of weeks ago. And then obviously like the tensions going on in the world and in my dear country Nigeria. So yeah, it's gonna kickstart this one. And we'll be talking about the Journey of the Colony first. I think is that the name of it? Journey of an African Colony.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, man. And actually before we kickstart this one, I think this series is definitely a series that I recommend every African. Doesn't matter if you're Nigerian. I feel every African should be in touch with this, because watching this series will make you understand like the underlying roots of why we are so underdeveloped right now in the continent. And yeah.
If you haven't watched it, pause the podcast, go and give it a watch and come back.
Don't watch it twice, watch it 3 times. Like, take notes.
Indeed, it's worth it.
The guy that narrated that thing, man, first of all, we have to commend him for research, for somebody to have that. And the thing is, like, another annoying thing is that, like, all these documents are out there, but our government don't never make conscious effort to give the masses in order for them to, like, but then again, who is the government?
Fact.
That's where the problem is. Who is the government? That's what the big problem is. But yeah, the Journey of the African Colony, in my perspective, was definitely one of the best documentaries I've watched so far. As I was just saying earlier now, it confirmed most of the conspiracy theories that I used to have in my head. Guy, you understand? It confirmed so much of it, and now it's actually made me, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's made me like believe more of my conspiracy theories, because like, I was so right. I was so right to certain guys. I just couldn't point names. I just couldn't name names. I just couldn't point who were involved. But yeah, it pretty much documented how Nigeria, as we know it today, was initially just 3 companies coming together and mashing up the whole thing. No wonder we have 500 something different tribes together. Like you go from one state to the next state. They're like, yo, is this Nigeria? It's very, very wild, man.
It's a geographical expression, isn't it?
It's exactly
just that area, that nigger area, innit? Just those.
Oh no! And by the way, this name, I don't feel comfortable, man, calling myself Nigerian anymore after this thing, because like. I feel like it's just such a slap on the face if I tell a white person, oh yeah, I'm from Nigeria. It just feels like, they're just laughing, they're like, oh, you don't even know where I came from. And guys, it's like, there's so much pain and even the word Guinea, like everything Africa just meant black.
Morocco, but like this, when I check the meaning, they say some funky stuff. But literally, as in the Moors, that was their area. They lived in Maghreb. So obviously the Europeans called them Moors. So when Maghreb went down and the Europeans colonized, what do you think they're going to name the area of those people? After the Moors, Morocco. But like, they named literally everything they saw black. Like, couldn't you, isn't there anything else?
Creativity out here.
No creativity, man. Just black.
But the thing is, like, even with that black thing, it's not about creativity. I genuinely feel like it came from the point of hatred. Remember the thing you said about the Moors, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's another history again that we're not really aware of, just the way I wasn't aware of this one. There's another history whereby, the Moors were daft, like they really fucked up Europe so bad that this guy took it. In fact, they made it personal. They made it personal, like a personal thing to come to Africa and literally for them as well, they did it like Prince 2 project management, man. Long term. I'm telling you, everything is in increments. There's one stage, like everything like that.
Tell me they agile the whole continent.
No, it's not. No, agile is even, they're generous. Prince 2 is long term project. This one, this one is just like half of the phase. So now we're just going, and I think, as opposed to like, apart from the series just confirming some of my conspiracy theories, I think it's very interesting to see how us as Africa, we don't really value like our forefathers, like hard work and stuff, because like there's no how. Okay, say for example, Nnamdi Azikiwe, all them were sold out, but you can't tell me that like the people were so comfortable just make sure they're just the house boys for the colonial people, for the imperialists, like that they didn't want to ever better their country. Like it didn't make any sense to me seen from that aspect of unity, because I'm sure like they knew about those real people like protesting, they knew about the market, like they had all this knowledge in their head, but the fact that they're just so comfortable with just being in power and not doing anything, it says a lot about us, man. And yeah, it's gonna what was your take on the series?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on the last part, I feel like for them, I mean, they learned from the best.
Exactly.
They learned how to govern the way the people that they took over were governing.
But they did it to you. So what are you learning? Like you're learning how to fuck yourself.
But that's the. I mean, if you don't, I feel like it was more of if you don't know better, right? You never really saw an option. You never, like when these people, there was this former Gaboner, I think they removed him, but he was there for years. And probably when people were protesting, and he was just saying like, when the Europeans were here, they never held a single election. Like no one ever voted for them. So how can you tell us about democracy? So if you think about such a system, right, you're going to implement the system the only way you've learned. If maybe there was a point in time when there was kind of a bit of democracy, a bit of authoritativeness, or I don't know. Someone can have an option, but that's all you know. Like you knew that when these people were facing problems, this is how they dealt with it. So when you get into power, even if you go for the most intentions, you're only going to implement your good intentions the only way
in it.
So I feel like that kind of was fucked up their mentality. But back to the series, man. Again, guys, go watch that stuff because it was more of so I knew some of the stories, like obviously you know the dickhead Lord be God, but I knew about the Appa Women's Riot in 1929. I knew about a few of the other stuff. I didn't know the railway one, but it was more of the fact that there is so much history, or not just even history, context behind all that history that we didn't learn in school. So we're just told this thing happened. No, look at Amago to Nigeria in 1914. But you didn't tell me everything that led up to it. You didn't tell me everything that happened after. You didn't tell me how that singular piece of information is actually impacting my life right now. And I feel like if we revamp the education system to begin to go back and start teaching all our history in context, that would be better for every Nigerian. And then final note to address Lord Lugard. Lord fucking Lugard. Because for me, I feel like if you with every empire, right, has expanded its reach, outreach. There's a difference between as in invading an empire, invading a kingdom or an area, looting it and then leaving, right? But there's something about like you're expanding your empire. You want to influence the way your way of life on those people.
Them.
Yes. So you want them to begin to live like you. But I feel like for this, it was none of that. Like even now, I feel like we're not even a colony of Nigeria, of the UK. We was never really colonized. It was a system where these people came and intentionally didn't want to like impact like the good values on our country. They just wanted to take as much as they can and leave the country intentionally, again, perpetually in that state of destruction. The way they set it up, the way they governed it, the way they developed, like everything was intentional not to bring any benefit to this country. And I just think like that's personal to me, man. That feels like as in it's like he's talking to me as in I'm gonna fuck this. I'm like, yo, man.
But he literally refused industrialization. Like he said no. He took it to the Middle East. In fact, guy, like he said no. Like they say we're going to, at least even the American guy, he wanted to do it for selfish reasons. But at least he still has some humane side in him. He's like, alright, cool. Let's just mine it here. In fact, it will be easier. It will be cheaper for you guys to do it here as opposed to back and forth. It will be easier to transport because Africa is actually the middle ground between America and Europe. It will be like everything was just there was so much advantage in creating like some industrialization. This nigga said no. No. It's personal, man. It's personal.
But as you said, the main takeaway for me when I witnessed that is, as you said, now we can sit down and have a spirited debate about this, whereas a week ago too we probably wouldn't have.
Literally, yeah.
And the beauty of that comes from the fact that we've now received the knowledge by means of that. But it's like, okay, if that's out there, right, in the end of the day, it's a documentary. There's only so much information you can fit inside.
Yeah.
The host that we're giving all that credit for being able to piece that together, he sifted through a lot of important things and decided to just highlight on these super, super essential aspects to let us know about, which lets me know that there's a plethora of information that we're missing out on. And the fact that this is getting our blood boiling, as well as getting us angry, it's also getting us motivated. The next step should be, well, for the first step for those of you that haven't watched this, to go and watch it. Then the next step should be to go seek out that rest of information that host might have left behind or that he might have even seen, so that we can first contextualize what it is that we're dealing with, where we've come from, so we can now create the best solution going forward that now is aware of the shortcomings of our previous system, so we can't fall into those traps again. You know?
I know another thing again is like, I think, to add on your point, right, I think it's very important for people to watch the documentary because, like, as Africans, most of the time, like you're trapped in this bubble. You're trying to find your next meal, all that kind of stuff. It's so hard for you to even understand why all these things are happening. So if you actually watch this kind of stuff, like you realize that guy, it's not that guy that's messed up. Like this is a whole different. This is a battle. Like this is a battle of somebody else not liking who you are as a human being. Like that's just eventually. That's actually what happened.
At the same time, though, although this brings about like a lot of negative emotion in us, if I may twist us and give us a bit of Mandela in this, I don't feel like there's a need necessarily. If that anger is what's going to motivate you to be better, then indeed go ahead and have it. But if it's just going to lead you to be angry with nothing else that will just lead to, I don't know what it may lead to, then it's of no use. We're trying to find solutions to these problems. I don't want to just sit down and be angry and shout at one another. Then when it comes to the real world, we're still doing the same stuff. It doesn't work that way, you know.
I think even in a way, actually, I think there's no how you can watch this and not want to do something. Like I don't know. As in, if you feel Africa, there's no how you watch this and you just say, "Oh, I'll just talk about it," and just be pissed off about it and then eventually let it slide. Like someone like me now, right? Not to blow my bubble, but like I kind of felt proud in a way because I'm a very strong advocate for diasporans, going back home, as opposed to like always talking about how messed up Nigeria is. Like at least doing something. For example, I have a barber shop. I employ like 3 people. To me, like that, after watching that documentary, honestly, I felt proud. I'm like, in a way, I'm like, shit. I'm like, even though, I'm not paying these niggas, I'm not doing anything to these people, at least I can say I have something that's helping somebody else get their next meal. And I just want to keep building up from that. And the guy is motivated me to just do more, get more businesses there, all that kind of stuff. Because like I feel like, again, that's the best way we can affect it. We can't win. We can't say, oh, we'll get angry and come and do exact same. Like it's not gonna happen. These guys are like 100 years like ahead of us. Like there's no how we'll catch up. So now I think the most important thing. You don't think so?
I don't agree with that thing. Well, go ahead.
You don't think they're 100 years above?
I mean, if they are, but that know-how that we can catch up, that second half of that thing I don't agree with.
No, I mean, like, we might not necessarily catch up from their own aspect. Or like the book we're reading right now, right? Development is just, it depends on what you see development as, right? So I'm talking in the context of catching up as in, reaching their own values that they set to the wall. When it comes to, like when it comes to that, I don't think we can ever, because it's something that they evidently like taught us, so they'll obviously be ahead every time. So I think the beauty of this one is, again, it's like after you see this documentary, it makes you appreciate your African heritage more. You want to do, like, I feel like it should make you, want to develop yourself from an African point of view more. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you shouldn't conform to like the stigma and the values they put ahead for people to come on.
You're so right. If I may chime in, what breeds things like nationalism and patriotism, right? It's founded on the basis of something. You feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. Yes. And it's easy to feel that in one generation. Sure, when people converge, you can feel that power. I don't know if people have been to any protests or anything. You feel that togetherness. But deeper than that, protest is one thing here, but my father's generation did this, we did that, and the effects of that, like, we can still feel it today. So if you look over here, although they're not proud to say to their chest, the British Empire, this, that, there's relics of it everywhere, and they always reference back to it, our forefathers, that even America, like, all over these parts of the world, that patriotism comes from the fact that you feel you're part of something bigger that's been built on generation on generation. So when you come in, you too, you feel that intrinsic, almost moral obligation to contribute to this larger thing. But for us, there's this infamous quote in politics. It says, "There's no history of Africa. There's only a history of Europeans in Africa." Right? And if we now take this 1914 onwards, for us now, that's the only Nigeria we've ever. That's only Nigeria, but that's the only context of our existence that we've known about well enough. Now that we're presented with information like this, it now comes a time where we have to take charge of our own narrative. At least that's what something that this documentary is telling me. We have something to be proud of, even if it's not our ancient history, even in just the formation of this country.
The
we have something to be proud of, to want to build on top of, and I'm like, that's where the next step should be, taking back our narrative from those that have handed it to us this whole time.
I'm gonna write that, taking back our narrative. And actually, earlier during the week, me and Chips were having a conversation, and you brought a very nice, very interesting point. I've just been sitting in my head. So he was saying the reason why the sense of nationalism in Nigeria died, stemming after that documentary, was a result that, like, after we got quote unquote independence, like we didn't see the need to like want to do any better again, because we had everything on the platter of gold, right? So you had people like them, Fela's mom, for example, that was fighting for like, for like a togetherness of the nation and all that kind of stuff. The railway workers, there's like a sense of nationalism, but as soon as the white people left, and as soon as we got our quote independence, stemming from, say, my mom's generation and my dad's generation, they didn't have that strong sense of nationalism in them, and it just went really downhill. And I like praising that one.
For me, I have a belief, right, that you don't get given power, you take power. Because if someone gives you power, that person still has power over you, because I gave it to you, I can take it away. So for me, I felt like the fact that not necessarily I'm advocating for violence, right, but the fact that our independence came so trouble-free, to me it felt like there's no feeling that you took it for yourself, so that you there's no feeling of I'm fully in charge of this situation. It felt more like, okay, because we were given this, we are just kind of like proxy leaders at this. Like we are still gonna, these people are still here, so in case stuff goes back, we'll just go back to them and they will take over. Not they will take over again, but as in you could rely on them in a sense. So it takes away that responsibility for you to like feel like, oh, I've taken this thing now, and this person didn't give it to me, I've taken it, it's all in my hands. Whatever happens to this thing now, it's all in my responsibility. I felt like if that had happened, that would have created a different situation of Nigeria, because the people that took it would not want to see, as in, if you remember, like when you're a kid, right, and you want to go and do something, and your parents or someone tells you, you better make sure this thing doesn't, or they give you like they say, okay, make sure that you enjoy it or something. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. You want to make sure that I can't go back and let them know that I flopped for this and I actually wanted. So I feel like if that had happened, bro, like there's no way people in that country would feel like or the leaders in the country would be like, oh, when things start going bad, they'll feel like, shit, it's fine, guys. Do you get what I'm saying?
But then again, I have a question, right? To follow your point, just plot twist. See, people like Kenyatta that actually did fight for the power.
That is my point.
They ended up becoming dictators, right? And from your own point of view, you're saying like, they didn't have anything to fight, but this guy had every reason to fight, and his justification for being a dictator was he had to hold on to that power. And then as a result, he forgot that, I have to take care of my people. I have to make sure power is evenly spread among everybody, because he was so scared of them. So in a way, he became an instrument of destruction in a way for that one. Like how, because based on your point, that's what can happen.
I mean, it's a possibility for that to happen, but I feel, in those scenarios, there might be other factors at play. Some of it might be example is the issue of Mugabe, right? Or even Castro in Cuba. It's hard to be an effective leader when you're starved of the A
Or like,
the tools to be a good leader. Right? You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to fix the country that that you just took over and make sure it's working right, but then you have external people fighting and stuff like that, there's an added factor to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in those scenarios, I'm not saying it's totally impossible for someone to take power forcefully and then flop it, right? It's not. It still might happen, but if it was something you took by force in a way, you feel a different sense of responsibility towards it. And if someone
need to protect it,
they need to protect it. Like even like
Kagame is a perfect example. Like now he feels like Rwanda is his like he wants, like he has a dream for Rwanda stemming from everything that's happened, and now he wants to create his like the Rwanda of his own dream, his own head. I'm sure he's taking different kind of measures that none of us can imagine, but like in a way it's still same. You know what I'm saying? Kenyatta didn't fully understand. Kenyatta didn't fully understand it, but him, like I think him actually, learning from all these past leaders and everything. Now it makes sense that he wants to do his own thing his own way. So I think it's a different process. But moving forward though, more, what do you think? How do you think we should approach the development of Africa? How do you think we should approach the development of Africa? And how do you think we should see development as? Because our idea of development, we've already established and agreed that it's flawed. Because the more we keep trying to copy them, the more we keep failing. Because we'll copy their political system, education, and all that, and we'll just keep failing. So how do you think we should start developing? We should start seeing development, brother.
See, jam question. To be honest, and this is just me being having political bias here.
Please tell me.
As I said, one has to come initially, as we said, by owning your narrative. So, as you said, there's a superstructure that exists in the Western world that's been imposed onto us for the most part, and we accepted that to like a wide degree, and that's still what exists. And going back to the conversation that we had a while back, there's a need to disassociate ourselves from that first and foremost, and see what we have on ground. Now, controversial, but a period in time that wasn't really, one was erased from history books, but also wasn't given a chance to see if it will fail or not, was across the continent, post-independence for most countries, was when you had a wave of what they coined African socialism, along the likes of Sankara, Lumumba, Nkrumah as well. Like you had a series of African leaders. We had Julius Nyerere as well. A series of African leaders who saw a fatal flaw in capitalism on the continent per se, mainly because they said like the sense of community and the way we live our life, it's ridiculously intertwined. So that in that sense, of that individualistic mindset that comes from capitalism, we won't necessarily be able to work. A system like that, where you look and you incorporate the existing power structures prior to anything that was put onto us, so be it your kingdoms or whatever localized ones that you have, and you incorporate that into a system of governance. I think that's the first step. And then, so owning your narrative for sure. So that's taking the step back to realize truthfully where it is you're coming from and what it is that you're dealing with. And then from there, a system of governance that incorporates existing power structures in your society to move forward. Because that's what they did here, and that's why they're so successful. And I said our model can't be the same, so we have to try something else.
But you see, the reason why I'm asking that as well, right, is okay, that model definitely helps our continent grow. But however, we know like everywhere is growing at a rapid age, and obviously we're probably one of the last continents to grow. In order for us to compete in the world, we need capital. And the model of capital right now is like industrialization, all that kind of stuff, and that comes hugely like a capitalist like mindset.
Indeed, and that's not to do with capitalism. Capitalism generates a ridiculous amount of wealth.
Okay.
You can't get rid of that. But when you talk about industrialization and the growth that comes, you think about the commodities and the raw materials that it takes for that to happen.
Right, fair enough.
Where is that for the majority situated? And we're going to go into it later with our next subject area, so I won't delve too deep into it. But that idea that the rest of the world is developing and here we are, as you said, it's a purposeful model. And if, for instance, now all African countries had to shut their borders and be like, okay, we're not trading with anybody. That industrialization that you're quoting that we're seeing everywhere almost ceased to exist because of the structures that exist. So if you're talking about that, having that need to industrialize on our continent, then it has to be a conscious effort from, I guess, African leaders across the board to be able to come together, cartel-esque movement, and then I guess you have an equal trade-off between what's being sent and what's being brought in, with the purpose of developing at home, you know, so that you can no longer have that being hung over your head and be subject to the markets of these commodities that you're trading and all this stuff, and allowing them to industrialize without your help. So anyway, I don't want to.
No, but the thing is like, sorry, one more point that was coming to my head, right? It was just like, what leverage do these people have over? I don't understand why African leaders don't understand the kind of power they have. Like, it doesn't make, like, I don't understand, like, everything is all from fear. Like, literally, it's all from fear. Because, like, literally, if all of them, like 50 or 51 countries in Africa, if they all come together today, like, the whole world will literally pee on their pants. Literally.
I think it's two things, right?
Let's hear it.
One is education and awareness.
Indeed.
Right? Because an educated man will always free itself, right? So, for one, most of them don't know. So most of them are not even aware of the way they're getting screwed over, or aware of, on the other side, of the opportunities and benefits they'll be getting
if they choose to
choose a different path. But a second thing, answer to that, which I was gonna demo at the book club, but I'll just prove it now, is exclusive. But is religion. And I would say on the flip side, right, we actually need religion, but we need religion in a different way that we think about religion.
Sure.
So when I was reading that book that we're reading for the book club, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, I know, and
Walter Rodney, by the way, in case anyone was reading.
Yeah, it touched on the point. There was a quote by someone called Ibn Khaldun, who was from Maghreb, modern day Morocco, or Tunisia, or those areas. And he dropped a quote. I'm paraphrasing everything, right? But what he was talking about was the role that Islam played in the development of that area, because he was like, the point of religion is for the moral and material benefits of the civilization. Now, most of us interpret religion as this spiritual thing. He was touching that Islam is a spiritual thing. It is something bigger than you, right? But people think about the point of religion is to get to that spiritual place, or that place of heaven or hell or wherever it is. But actually, the main point of it is your moral and material, like what you're actually doing here on earth. And if you look at every great empire, they all had a religion. The Romans had Pax Romana, which is not really a conventional religion, but it had a religion in the sense of it's a set of principles and ideologies that guided the way they morally and materially dealt with their civilization. The Europeans had Christianity, the Arabs had Islam. America has capitalism, because even though they might have different religions, they have people that are secular destined. Capital is their central religion.
Scientology, all that stuff.
They believe in that, and that's how they treat themselves, and that's how they treat the environment. But I feel like the religion that was given to Africa only touched on the moral part. So only touched on things like forgive your enemies, purposefully, and it never touched on the fact that on the material aspects of how we're meant to deal with our civilization. Which, if you go back in time, you probably see that was the religion our ancestors had, because our ancestors had a way of dealing with their environment. It might not have been the most efficient, but at least that religion covered both parts. It covered the way they treated each other and covered the way they deal with
them. I how would strike you, man. And you fuck up
exactly. Things like that. Like, okay, I have to grow. Like, if how I'm plant. The way they saw their environment, like, okay, I have to grow this kind of crop, I have to grow this kind of things, I have to build this kind of industry, I have to do all this kind of stuff. So I feel right now for us, one, if you get the education down, get people more aware, knowing what the hell is going on. And two, we need to build a new religion that actually touches on what we value in the way we want to deal with our moral and material. But we can't leave that part off. Religion can no longer just be spirituality, let's go to church, let's go to mosque, let's pray and understand. It has to touch about the material aspects of what we're doing with our civilization.
You say building, first of all, wow, phenomenal. But secondly, when you say that, do you mean building on the backbone of the existing religions in these structures, or like as you said, how America has created this monster that we are now all subject to?
First of all, I mean, whatever, if you want to be a Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, that's fine. But the country has to have one common religion. I mean, one set of principles that everybody believes in. You can have ad hoc principles as well. Anything you want to adopt it, a Christian or different. But we have a singular common religion. Not necessarily religion in the way that people interpret it, but those set of principles and ideologies that is ingrained in every one of us. This is just how we operate. And once that happens, then you stop seeing the factions. You stop seeing people seeing yourself as Northerner, Easterner, this. Because everybody has that same common mindset.
Do you know why we're ripe for that though? Because as you said, we do have, for the most part, if we pick out our country, there's two separate religions and then the minor in between. As you said, they focus on the spiritual aspect. Now in that sense, they run parallel with each other. That spiritual aspect of religion for all these groups I'm talking about. So there's an ease in making that, I guess, one uniform solution there. And the beautiful side is when you talk about that's the moral side taken care of. Now the material, there is like not even a foundation to build on, which is beautiful. Because it means there's no preconceived notions that can be argued with or whatever. We can actually all come to the table and come up with a solution that we're ripe for that. That's phenomenal.
That's literally.
And
go on.
To add a point again, I think that's a very, very interesting take in terms of like, you know, having a universal thing, because I honestly think that's the only way, like, you know, you can bind people together, even from a political point of view, right? So for example now that all this whatever is happening in Nigeria and stuff, it's the northern Nigeria, it's creating like a negative narrative that is not necessarily solving the problem, because you're seeing northerners from that point of view and like, oh, everybody, they have that kind of ideology. So like, you're not really helping them from that point of view, you understand? But if you have this centralized thing where everybody believes in, you know, if a president, because it creates a sense of patriotism, which touches back to exactly what he said, right? Nationalism, patriotism, whatever that thing is. If you have that one thing, you know that whoever is in power is like, is coming to honor the country because the whole country believes in that. As opposed to, this is my religion, so cool, I'm going to do that.
So it's actually interesting to think of the fact that even though the Europeans were Christian, why didn't they change the northern as to Islam? Because most places that do colonize, they changed religion for everyone. Like the Arabs made everyone there. I mean, I think in the book he touched about there was a part, I think, somewhere in the East Africa, it was easy for them to change religion when they got a new conquerors who were Christian, right, from Islam. Because ideally, or vice versa, I can't remember. Because fundamentally, they never really believed in Islam like that, right? But regardless of whether you believe it or not, this is, you get, like, for the empire, for them to actually be productive in those new empires or colonies they had built, everybody had a common like philosophy or idea. But for some reason, they feel like they didn't want to centralize.
I have a take on that actually.
Night, go on.
But my conspiracy theory again, and I'm sure this guy in season 2 will bring it back. But my thing is with the North, I think Lugard was very calculated. Like I think he purposely wouldn't have done that because he wanted them to feel some part of power. Like he wanted them to feel like, you are more superior than me. So if he tells them that, those people have no question to execute them because he left them to be whoever they were, whoever they wanted to be, or whatever like that. So in terms of independence as well, stemming to right now, it makes much sense that their system work efficiently because geographically the North had so much people, and in order for them to establish as much, because bro, they were tensioning them, like all these like strikes and everything. They already know that the Southerners are always going to like, you know, rebel, and they would have probably liberated themselves and everything. So in order for them to keep control, it was very easy for them, you know, to leave the North the way they are, make them feel like, you know what, you guys are a bit more special than people down here.
Even that famous quote by the Shehu, was that will I be able to practice my religion in peace?
Mm-hmm.
And probably because of that was probably
you have a sense of respect for, you know what I mean?
Because if you were like, nah, fuck, I'm gonna change, they would have been not with the problem like, nah, you're not. You get what I'm saying? There would have been more resistance to it. But the fact that maybe they let them have their religion was like, it gave them that sense of, okay, we're different.
Yeah, we're different and we have more power.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I to today don't believe like the British people like purposely give the North like power in Nigeria just because of the geographical side. I think they did that intentionally because that already conditioned them to be like the sole like dominators of like the quote unquote Nigeria that was going to happen, because they had to, bro, because if the South had as much power or the East had as much power, Nigeria won't be the way Nigeria is right now. But you have to have the most people that have like the most geographical, you have to give them that power in order for your ideas to keep flourishing over and over and over and over and over again. And that's why that's my conspiracy behind it. So I hope this guy confirms it in my season 2. I'll be so proud of myself.
Sorry. Actually, do you want to go?
No, unless you're changing the topic.
No, the question, not necessarily changing, but so the superstructure in the North before the Europeans came, right? Was it like information was still consolidated between like the oligarchs or the elites, and then most of the other people were out of.
It was a feudal system. It was mostly feudal.
Although you see it was indeed feudal, but and to tie into one of the reasons why overthrowing religion in the North had been a difficult task is that Islam, unlike any other religion I've ever seen before, is so heavily entrenched in every aspect of life and very much internalized by its followership. So on the one hand, if you look at why Lugard decided not to, you're basically telling somebody to stop fundamentally being themselves, which in turn could easily see us going down the road of bigger rebellion. But then also on the one side, the reason why he was also okay with and answering the Shehu yes to that question that he asked was because the system of governance as well as education was solely based around Islam. They could count on the fact that whereas in the South you're seeing individuals that are getting educated and aware of how their systems are working, then they can now begin to use those tools against them. You're like, okay, you're choosing to be ignorant and choosing live your lifestyle, which means that you are not really, I guess, tapped in or as aware of what I am doing, and that works perfectly for me. You know, it's a good compromise for the two. But then, as you said, in that superstructure, definitely, the highest form of knowledge would have been Islamic knowledge, which was readily available for everybody. You know, and that's what separated you.
So people that were not like just commoners, right? Did they have access to information? Just that the information was solely about Islam, or even then they didn't have access to information? Like,
what kind of information are you speaking about, though?
Just general. Like, was there any? I mean, was there a way for anyone to acquire the knowledge that the Sultan will have? Was it like you know how you have different facets of society, right? You could have like this is the king, this is the even in the Shabbat Jews, you had the Pharisees, you had the Sadducees, you had this, you had that. Were there was this function, or it was just the king and everyone else? No,
there's definitely levels to society. There's the king, there's high society, there's landowners, there's Islamic scholars. Like that.
By the way, Islamic scholars were a huge thing. By the way, that's something that people don't actually highlight. Like the North is not as uneducated as people actually.
No, but that's where the value of education. That's where the side of education came from. The fundamental principle in Islam is to seek knowledge. You know, but naturally there's just such a wealth of Islamic knowledge, which has transcended so many aspects of life. If you talk about the Ottoman Empire and how many like discoveries are made during that time, it makes sense. But then it's so easy to be so inside that realm of Islam and the Islamic world because there's so much knowledge in that space. It's difficult to break out. Plus that need to keep the knowledge like sphere pure. So delving into secular information that wasn't necessarily seen as, I guess, the highest, like, I don't know, the best thing to be doing when there's so much Islamic knowledge yet to, you know.
So pre-Lugard, information was dispersed. It was decimated across different, not to everyone, always not to, but at least there were different factions that could
Indeed,
get information.
indeed.
So this was, again, I feel like Lugar's designed to actually bring that culture of like stifling information.
I'll actually say yes.
Yeah.
Because when he conquered the Sokoto Caliphate, right, I feel like there's no how Lugard is that daft not to appoint people that will like solely bow down to him as like their sole, their sole leader. Because the fact that like, you know, he's put you in that position of power, you feel some kind of importance. So he probably maybe control the way people like got educated or whatever, you know, like he controlled the population's education in a way. I don't know how he did it, but I'm sure in his own quest for power, like there's no how you're a powerful person and you want everybody to be as liberated as you. It doesn't make sense. Like, especially with the kind of intentions he came with, there's no how he wanted anyone to be as intelligent as he. So whoever, maybe the leaders he put in there contributed to maybe like the lack of education or lack of lack of development.
But you tapped into that then, as well as Nigeria today, and I don't know if that's by design. This idea that, okay, so it's clear the reins of Nigeria was very much handed to the North. It was. That's just without dispute. And as you say, these people rarely do things on impulse. It's very much an educated decision. And we've seen time and time again, be it in their local communities all the way up to federal level, Nigerian leaders from the North neglect their people, and the North is ridiculously underdeveloped as a result. The narrative we were sold was it's been left in the hands of the Northerners because truthfully they've been so underdeveloped through this period, and if like effectively if they have the reins, then they can begin to develop their communities and create, I don't know, this metropolis that they never had before. That was the narrative we were sold way back when. However, we have seen the fact that that's not what was done. And I'm just wondering whether it was a conscious decision at the time, because I don't know how you can know that. How aware could you have been that this was what would transpire?
I mean, like, again, it makes so, I mean, it does make sense in a way that, like, why undereducation is a thing. Because, like, for example, right, if they promise you amount of power, and I'm sure, again, Lugar designed this thing, we've all agreed it's not an impulse, right? If he's promised, say, like, the Sultan or whoever he put in charge power, I'm sure he would have given them, like, you know what, in order for you to be in power, like, everybody under you has to have same ideology. Like, you have to be able to, like, completely influence everybody below you, right? And so maybe with time that kind of like change. Even maybe say before you had like scientists or whatever that were just living like free. Maybe after Lugar's period now, the emir is like, if you're a scientist, he brings you close to the part. Like he brought every information towards him. And then with time, because we don't really know our history like that much, that just became what it was. Like every scholar and everybody like kind of just stayed around close to the royals or whatever, and then all the commoners had no idea what was going on apart from the prayer they go to.
But that's a presumption, right? That's a presumption.
I mean, it's a presumption, but like from just thinking about and like seeing how everything played, it like I feel like that's the only way it would have made sense. Because as a leader, if an emir is trying to say like take over his own place and liberate his people, surely the first thing you do is make sure everybody's aware of the fight you are fighting right now. But the leaders didn't actually really do that.
No, I agree. Like the idea of implementing yes men in these spaces to help suit your purpose, but I don't know if there was more depth to that in terms of the structure. That's the way you phrased it in terms of culminating all these people into this space to be aware. That much depth, as you said, is because there's a lapse in our history in that space. But although these royal families stay the same through that period, I guess less so putting people in that place because it's royals. No one's going to accept, no matter how, they're not going to accept anybody else. I guess it's more so just the military might that they saw and they were met with was enough to get whoever was the existing leader to fall in line. As you saw with the Sheikh Borno deciding, I'd rather just, bring what you want, just keep us these principles, I'm still in charge. He was terrified, but he was still like very much so the rightful guy to be there. But I don't know.
Yeah, because it seems like to me there's a system of not even as in. So if you take for example, like if you watch Yoruba and Igbo cultures, right? There's so much in Igbo that we do that is influenced by even some like you said like Megan.
Mm-hmm.
The way even some like say Megan like it's the house of like we bring so much from other people's cultures, right? In Yoruba as well they do. But I feel like there seems to be a culture where even a northern person, if they leave their community, even if they go around
their principles
and they see other things, they still don't want to take it on. Like it seems like they've been as in, do you get what I'm saying? Like they've been programmed. It doesn't seem like something
biggest shortcoming. It's our biggest shortcoming.
But it doesn't seem like something that evolved in natural states. Do you get what I'm saying? Like oh, these people are just natural like that.
Elitist, this thing?
No, not with elites. I feel like just even a normal person, like the people that like the nomads, the ones that go around with the headsmen.
Yeah.
They still, even if they say a lot, there's still like a culture where they don't want to pick up certain values. And it, to me, doesn't seem like a natural, like, oh, their culture just evolved like that. It feels like someone intentionally kind of wherever you see outside, don't look at it, this is the only thing you must know. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't, I feel like like, that's what I asked you, was it there before? Like, beforehand, was there just one sect of society? Because now I just feel like there's just one sect, everybody's, like you said, around that king, the scientists, everybody's just there, and then there's everyone else. It just feels like that now, and I don't feel like that was natural. I don't see how that would naturally evolve in any civilization.
In a way, man, actually, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that.
I have a theory with that, though.
Okay.
There was always a need to protect our Islamic culture up north, definitely. But the north was always open for business. So they never shut anybody or anything out if it was going to come for the betterment of its people, whatever. There was never that resistance, for sure. Very much welcoming. Through a ridiculous amount of time, they've been very much welcoming. And I feel the narrative changed post-Civil War. I felt like there was a lot of propaganda in either direction that now led us to believe, okay, these people that we saw these values in, and that we could exchange these ideas and goods and whatever it may be, now they are the enemy, and there is nothing we can gain from that space that's worthwhile. And so our veil has gone up in terms of, I told you, it's always to a T. We'll work with you and be present with you until we begin to feel like there's a hindrance to our growth in that space. That's how it's always been. Now there's been that hindrance, and that's where that stops. And definitely, that's just how the story's been from time. At least that's what I
so it's our own doing, as opposed to like the imperialist like mindset. This stemmed from us disagreeing among each other, as opposed to.
I mean, what caused the disagreement initially?
But everybody disagreed. But even after the disagreement, there's still that level. Like, even if I don't, I mean, there are some evils I know that don't fuck with the north. But there's still, something.
Wait, what's going on here?
Our next door neighbor.
But the thing is, there's still a bit of open-mindedness. You get what I'm saying? As in, it's hard for me not to. If you show me something that is dope, it's hard. Even if I don't fuck with you, if I know this is clearly better for me, it's hard for me to reject it just because I don't fuck with you. But I don't know. I don't like naturally, unless it's someone as in they're repeating it to me over and that indoctrinates me not to adopt that mindset. You get what I'm saying? So
I do, man. But when I think about it, I say, okay, if it's something that improves lifestyles, I don't see a hindrance. I don't see anybody turning that away, even in the north. So I'm like, what is it potentially?
Because in a way,
is it belief systems? So because I can't
welcoming us for
something that has been brought from the south or from the west, sort of, that has not been so easily incorporated into the north, to the point where it begins to infringe on. When I say our way of life, I mean like Islam and how that.
Can you give me an example of any cultural?
Please give them that OMB theory. That's no. It's actually very perfect. Actually, touch on that.
But then that's to be honest with you, that goes against my point.
No. You brought it up. You brought it up.
Okay.
They tie it back together.
So you talk about the question on ground was, what is it that's been brought from the south or from other parts of Nigeria that has been heavily, like, I guess, embraced in the north?
Culturally, though, across both.
Culturally?
Yeah, culturally.
Okay. Now, the example that we had, you can tell we had a previous discussion about it, was how there has been an adoption of that whole of the Awambe and the ceremonies that come from the Yoruba land up in the north. So whereas before you have a society that's structured on the grounds of humility, God's plan, humble, as I said, hakuri, in every aspect. And if I give this the basic societal structure, it's you have a wealthy elite class who do a very good job of, I guess, remaining humble and living in humble abodes, keeping, I guess, their wealth to some degree under wraps for good reason, and then themselves giving handouts to some degree to a populace of people that aren't doing as well as them, for sure, the masses, if we may call them that, who in turn are content, that principle of hakuri, with what it is that they have, not asking for too much, being content with what they're being offered by that wealthy ruling class. However, as I said, now that we're embracing a lot of these ceremonies that we begin to see from the south of Nigeria, you begin to see a wealthy class of Nigerians from the north who normally would be humble and keep their wealth and their wraps, begin to open that door up and display like huge displays of wealth through wedding ceremonies, dresses,
lifestyle,
bringing in artists in, exactly, just that whole lifestyle, flexing, and everyone's not trying to one up the next person. But so like that's an example of something that's been embraced and brought into the north. But then as I said, the north don't tend to bring things in that harms their way of life. This is harming their way of life, but I don't think like it's being spotted.
But is it an across-board northern culture within this Owambe, or is it just this elite? Like, does the average northern man have still now? Is he now adopting that Owambe lifestyle, or it's just those elites who never really had, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the elites have always lived to a different set of rules than the common northern person.
To some extent, they didn't before, if you ask me. However, on that point that you made, the elites dictate how the masses live. In most societies, but in the north, very much so. So as you said, now that's the new benchmark, although it's creating dissent, it's also now, as I said, what they're aspiring towards as well. Because now they feel like it's not what they're aspiring
it's
towards.
kind of progressive in a way. Not really.
I don't know if it's
but it is progressive because everybody's in search of more knowledge and more information, which is a good thing.
But in what aspect? It's shallow knowledge, if you ask me. It's not of substance. Anyway,
but the culture of just an average northern person only, because those average northern people, right? They would have seen this Owambe lifestyle when they moved across Nigeria. You get what I'm saying? How come it's now only when the elites are doing it that they would do it? Because in other countries, go for the west and go to the east, right? Fuck what the king is doing. If I fuck with it, I'm gonna do it. You get what I'm saying? But in the north, it's only from if the elites are doing it, then we're gonna do like.
So there was a stereotype around that. You know how they say that the Yorubas,
But as you said, there's the power of independent thought in these societies that you mentioned, which doesn't necessarily exist.
But is it a natural thing, or is it intentional? That independent thought, are they intentionally like keeping the common northerner out of independent thought, or is it something that the common northerner is just naturally doing? Because I feel like it's intentional, and I'm trying to establish: I thought it was maybe Lugard, the way Lugard set up, or you're saying it's from civil war. But I don't think just for the fact that we're in war would make someone now be like, nah, I'm never going to learn anything from these people. You get what I'm
saying? That protective nature, prior to any... Islam's been around in Nigeria for over 1,000 years now. Kanuris, shout out to us, first tribe to receive it in. That fundamental aspect of we keep our culture how it is because this is the best way of life. There's no need for us to incorporate anything in. That was always the way it was. And then if you're met with other ideologies, let's say goods, whatever it is, that will help advance that lifestyle that you already live, then you incorporate it in. The point when it begins to be at the detriment of that faith and all that is when you begin to shoot it out. That's when it was at its purest form. However, now I agree with you. It's more so like there's power dynamics to it, and it's that system of mind that's just being used to perpetuate a lot of the issues that we have right now without the same, I guess, heart that came with it before. And as you said, that's why we begin to chip away at this stuff. which I guess the principle, it's already lost. It's shallow. There's no substance at the core of it anymore, and it's just the exterior that's beginning to crack and fall away.
Well, you see, another interesting point, as you guys were saying something as well, right? Like this aspect of how the North is like really sucked into like one thought. It might still like come from like from not necessarily imperialistic, but from like a conquering kind of place. Because I would have imagined as well, Usman Danfodio, right? When he first came, no, seriously, when he first came, there were tribes in there, and then they always say like he was the one that brought Islam. I mean, apart from the Canadian, like so, it made sense that he would have made those structures like that from a very long time, in order for him to keep having like that kind of prominence. But then again, he left, so I don't know.
But as she's mentioned, like when we first started, that idea of you fought for something, so you want to keep it that way. Now that Usman Danfodio now, best believe he fought to bring all these tribes,
and everything,
and then it's like, okay, now we have something that's worth protecting.
Right.
Thus we have to keep it that way.
Right. Okay.
But then let me ask you, truthfully, in substance, what is it about, I'd say, southern parts of Nigeria that they've incorporated from the north?
I mean, language, and I cannot specifically.
Derogatory language, though. Let's actually keep it.
Like a lot of words in and how we speak, like even the slang we use in Igbo. Like I told you about one of my grandma's title is Wangwe. I can't say it very well in Igbo, but Wangwe Nama, like the woman that killed the cow. But the word Nama is taken from that. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of phrases. I'm pretty sure like certain cultural things might not be explicit, but we just as in okay, that's how these people do it. The Ashebi culture was taken from the Yorubas. It's an Igbo thing now, where your son is getting married. Now the whole
everybody
doing Ashebi. That was taken from the Yoruba. You know what I'm saying? We incorporate things.
But see,
I'm pretty sure there's probably even things from the north that we've just learned. Maybe the way you design your house, you get just something. But it doesn't seem to me that anyone naturally would see something that they like and not incorporate it, unless they've been told not to. You get what I'm saying? If it's up to me and I like it, there's no way I'm not going to take it.
No, I think there's a long history behind it. Even probably like now, just thinking about it probably came even before Lugard. Because before Lugard, there's somebody that conquered the north. So it made sense that it came from a place of, as you said, protecting what you've conquered and making sure that like nobody ever breaks it. Because eventually, actually, if you even look at it, Islam is actually what made Islam like the biggest region in Nigeria. It's what made the north the biggest region in Nigeria, because like they held on to that fundamental beliefs, and Lugard in his own way said, you know what, as opposed to changing this thing, I'll use that core principles to achieve my own goal.
But if you look at the way Islam has been practiced across that areas, some Islamic communities are very, I mean the northern, going back to the Moors, they were very like, as in seeking knowledge, like even Islam, like you said, it means it's about seeking knowledge. So it makes sense that religion would make someone not want to seek knowledge.
But no, they're aware. There's just a stigma around it. There's nothing that they're not aware of. You can meet not the typical, not anymore, but an educated northern man, and he can give you the same level of insight that a southerner might into northern culture. He can do vice versa.
But
he just does not want to choose it. Now, I can tell you this categorically. Within this generation, a decade or two, that's going to change. One, the mystique around the north, we just keep putting this north barrier, it's all going to come crashing down. The level of interconnectedness has opened up the north to so many other aspects of life that I feel like you can only resist that assimilation for so long. And it's done and dusted. It's sad to see, if you ask me personally.
Why?
Because
why more?
Why more? On Chip's point earlier, the reason why I can see him being so outraged by that thought process is there's so much value you can gain from things you don't know, from other cultures and the aspects. And I'm fully on board with you on that. So in that space, when you look at the north, it's like, yes, indeed, we should be able to be open to see things that can improve our standard of life, be aware of different perspectives so we can change our views. However, there's some fundamental principles that make us uniquely us that need to stick around, if you ask me. Like now, if you talk about Hakuri and humility, I love the fact that like for the typical northerner, if you look him head to toe, you can't see his net worth.
Yeah.
You can't, when he opens his mouth to speak, you don't know what it is. It's just, it's knowledge, it's purity, you know, that comes from that space. And I appreciate those aspects, but I feel like we're losing out on some of those core values. Even Islam and the value and the depth to which we used to learn it. These Al-Majri schools that we used to make fun of before, that was something to be renowned. Your son is in an Al-Majri school, like that's phenomenal.
I told you now, Sadaqah was the best thing ever.
And I look at all this stuff and I'm like, we're losing out on all this because we're so insecure and there's this inferiority complex about us and our culture.
We're getting bullied in a way.
But you know what's matter, right? If you actually said,
that's actually a great point.
If you said these are the values that we fuck with, like these are good values, right? If you got rid of the bad ones, you shine those good values more.
Yeah.
And you won't see other cultures emulating
That's
all
the
that.
point. That's the point. So, but you have to see value in your own to be able to do that, and they don't. They don't. Like now,
I can't lie. Yeah.
Think about, as I said, the elite dictate how the rest of the mindset works, because there's a ridiculous amount of ignorance in the masses versus the elites. So they just take what they're being told for the most part. Now these elites that exist, sure, they're perpetuating the system, whatever. But the next generation, so ours, that's seeing all these other cultures and interacting with all these spaces, like, they don't see that value that I'm talking about in all these spaces. So it's a case of, damn, these Yorubas are out here wild and that shit crazy, you know? You're going to Igbo weddings, you're seeing people all decked out, everybody's matching, you're like, this shit's mad, I'm going to take that back.
I think we should do it from our own point of view.
And
as
that's
opposed
fine.
to,
But then now, that rest of it, the humility, all those core values, I'm like, you're not carrying that along with you, and that we fear losing that.
Because in a way, we actually touch on very, I love exactly what you said right now. Because me too, in a way, I became a victim of that. One thing that's unprogressive, all that kind of stuff. It's just recent like couple of years now that I embrace like my northern like culture, and I want to do it a bit more. Because like the thing is, in a way, in terms of even like the humility point of view, right? I really love that aspect of it, because like it's not that you did it because you wanted to help a poor person. It made you feel good. It made you feel like a prominent member, like an active contributor of like the community, which I think is one of the most beautiful aspects of my own culture. But the thing is, like, now everybody's so carried away with, like Westerners, everybody thinks for themselves, everybody has that kind of stuff now. So it's easy for you to like confirm from that. You completely break, and exactly what we're saying about in terms of development. This is actually crazy how it's been in terms of development, how Nigeria wants to be like the white and all that, and completely ignoring their value. That's exactly what's going to go happen in the north. Because you start going from their own point of view, and you've completely lost that. And then when you meet a hurdle, because every civilization meets a hurdle, right? When you meet a hurdle, you don't know how to deal with it, because you've grown. You've been copying for so long. Now you don't even know exactly what. I think. I love that point. I think it's a good point.
That's a mad point, actually. That's a dope point. And I would say, the goal obviously is to find that balance, that right balance, because on one hand, even like when I say African traditions, like the fact that these people were going from their perspective, right? There are some parts of our culture that we should do away with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that should be the same. Okay, there are some parts of this culture we're going to do away with, but we need to make sure that we don't throw away the baby with the bathwater.
Exactly.
Right? So we need to keep this. So just finding that right balance. But however, I just wanted to say, so in terms of like making the northerners more open to take on more cultures, do you think like intermarrying within Northern?
No, leave our imams alone. Go away. leave our imams alone.
I see an agenda. Leave them alone.
Guys, leave our imams alone. Don't stop. Like girls. I don't want that he's so passionate about it, man.
As long as they're allowed to collect some chill.
But the thing is, like, no, it's coming from a point that they're pissed off because we get those informers and they can't get Azena. Like that's where the point is coming from.
No, you just have to freshen up now. Zainab looking at you guys, they're not making too much sense for her.
You understand? Zainab kind of loves her culture as well in a way.
Yeah.
But
Loki Zainab is bullied into staying in line like that, man.
I mean, she's bullying.
That's a story for another day.
Look, yeah, true.
Guys,
I remember, going back to story again.
I'm gonna bring that segment. I'm gonna line that up for us.
Risky talk. That would be a risky talk.
If I showed Zainab my culture, I think she'll like it.
Nah, this guy.
I don't think she'll like it.
Guy, the problem is you'll be fucking with Zainab hard for a few years, but then one day you just wake up and she'll text you her wedding invitation. She's marrying Ibrahim.
No, she'll break up that mindset. No.
I'm sorry, it is.
I'll open her mind.
But no matter what, you open that mind, it's not happening.
Intermarriage that comes in, but is when you have that culture clash. Right, the thing about intermarriage is, I guess, is when you have that culture clash. Because we can have this amazing bond, we can have this stuff, but then our value systems, no matter how, even though we're all sitting down here and we have common values, like there is an element to which we all differ, right? And it's cool because we're friends, we can go our separate ways. But then between you and Zainab now, what's gonna happen? You're raising kids, you want them this way, you want them that way. You're setting up your household, you want it this way, you want it that way. The influence of her extended family, you want it this way, she wants it that way. That's where the complications come.
And that's actually what you touched on. She might like certain aspects of the culture that you're rejecting. Like in terms of like,
exactly.
She might like
I'm open-minded.
No, you're not. You're not.
I think I agree with that.
That's the thing to do. And you obviously, like, if you have kids with them, you want them to be like, you want them to be open-minded to a certain degree. And because that's a bit alien to her, she might not want it. Naturally, because
who knows?
Who knows? Because like that's what she's grew up in, and she obviously everybody that has a kid. I've never had a kid before, but I imagine if you have a kid, you want to raise a kid with your own value. Do you know what I'm saying?
I hear that.
As opposed to anything else. So it might be one of those ones. Last point actually I was going to touch on this documentary is like, honestly, I think we need to really highlight the importance of women in life. Like the contribution of
definitely.
We need to actually highlight like the contribution of women in life, man. Like the fact, honestly, like one thing that makes me really embarrassed about being in Nigeria is the fact that like after everything like Fela's mom did to get like independence, like the same people went to throw her down a building to kill her, and it like. And the fact it doesn't really make any sense to me that like after independence, like the issue of like what's it called like men in ginger it doesn't make sense that patriarchy still exists in night, because if we're actually so in touch with our destiny, because she didn't die that long ago. I'm sure she died during like all these generals like time of rule. If everybody was aware of this woman's contribution to the world, like I feel like as a society we should be progressive enough to see women in a certain level of importance compared to the whole world, because like they're the first people. In fact, the Abao people were they're the first
revolution
to start revolting when all our men were just when all the men were just they're just happy interpreting, wearing ties and shit. Like the women were the first people to tell her, nah, we want our kids to grow up better, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's honestly something that like even in black culture as well, if you are very aware of most of these historical events, it will make us actually like it will help us like treat our black women better, not even just from Nigeria context, but from just because I'm sure most of this thing is a pattern. It has to be a pattern that women care more about the society than the men.
It's crazy how full circle that is, right? Because you look at that period, like even just from the documentary, and you look at those 1, 2, 3, 4 women that they highlighted, right? Forefront, as you said, the ones that set the pace, that led to the domino effect of what we have today.
Yeah.
Right? And then we come to today, and you look at, we're going to chime into, but the SARS movement, it's completely led and orchestrated by women. Like almost exclusively. And then you ask yourself, and on a largest level, a majority of a society's economy, like in our setting, is informal. And who runs the informal economy? Women. So they're the backbone of society in every single aspect. Largest part of our population as well. Why then is it, with all these contributions, that there's no, I guess, converse, respect that they deserve, the respect and the pedestal they ought to be at? Because if they're capable of all this stuff, why is it that they cannot still not break that mold?
I mean, I feel like again it might just be us perpetuating historical context, though. The structure that these people, like going back to the structure that these Europeans put on us, right? They came from a misogynistic culture, so obviously that was perpetuated into our culture as well. but not even just putting solely the blame on them, because reading about the history of African countries, we're talking about the, I can't remember which area it was, but it was the Islamic area as well. They had a system where the women were kind of like subjugated. So it's not, I feel like there's this weird, I don't know, I think there's this weird desire that we have where we have attached our masculinity to power, where we feel like without having power, we're no longer males. But and that keeps perpetuating. I always try to make sure we maintain that structure that, this women cannot rise up enough, because if they challenge our power, then they challenge our masculinity. But for us, I think now for our generation, breaking out of that mindset, and this is not becoming like a simp and all this kind of women.
No, it's simply somebody that says something evidently to their position. Literally, you know it.
No, not that, but it's generally understanding that, for one, from when the chips are down the most, especially for black women, I don't know about the white women and the Caucasians and everything, but for black women, when the chips have been down, they've had our back every single time. Regardless. So for one, it's paying homage, not paying homage, but paying respect to the effort they put in. And two, the fact that there is so much more to offer. Imagine half of your population has, like, you're doubling your effort, whether it's how your brain power, your skill set, everything is double if you unlock that potential. So it's just a no-brainer for the fact that we keep going down this route of, no matter after everything they do, we want to revert back to some pointless patriarchal system. But
I have another take on that. Yeah, I think another thing is, like, not necessarily like their own fault or anything, but it's like they have so much trust in us, and we keep feeling them time and time again. No, but
toxic relationship.
No, yeah, it's like a very toxic relationship, because like they do all the hard work and they just allow us to like. So they do all the fights, put their life on the line, everything, and then when everything is settled, and okay, cool, don't worry, the men should take charge. And I think that narrative as well from them, they need to be more stronger. Like you need to, like, when you start something, see that thing all the way through, just the way, because I don't feel like, I mean, evidently Nigeria is really messed up now because of the men. Like, they just took 4 of them in a room and just to... I don't see someone like a Pelawura like saying yes to that. I actually don't see that happening. So it's like, when they start something, they need to follow up on their ancestors and finish it and see it all the way through in order for them to see what they wanted to achieve. Not to just, okay, we've done this, okay, we'll just give our men because of it. That's an aspect of culture that we need to change as well. Because it all boils down to the cultural aspect of it as well.
But any sort of change like that, as you said, it's forcibly taken. So indeed, they need to make efforts on their own part. However, men that identify with that viewpoint that's identical to theirs need to also step up for them in those spaces. Because sure, they might be the majority in population, they may be whatever. The truth is, power does lie in the hands of males in society.
Yeah, fact.
And whatever power that we can leverage as members of society that have the same viewpoint as them, we need to then lend it over to them. You look over, terrible example, but if we carry Martin Luther King, for instance, and his March to Freedom Civil Rights Movement, that was a checkerboard of a crowd you see in every single one of these speeches, because it takes power from both sides to be able to come through. He had his people, and then he had whites, the minority, but still people that had his plight and could use their privilege to help him get to where he was trying to go. That's what we need to do. We need to use our privilege to help these women get into these positions that they deserve to be in.
But the thing is, like, for certain instances, I feel like sometimes, though, or in some instances, the women actually just actively just give us the responsibilities because they completely trust us like that. Because maybe, I don't know if it's because culture has taught them to do that, or religion has taught them to do that. Like, actively, they feel like, I mean, they're the bravest ones, but they somehow feel like we are the ones that, like, are more suited for it, in a way. Because, like, I don't understand why women didn't really revolt after that in order for them to have a degree of power in Nigeria. They just completely just allowed the men, everybody's a god, like all that kind of stuff happen.
And back to the thing that you said as to when you fight for something, you have to need to protect it. We didn't necessarily fight as hard, and if we got handed it, then there's less of a need to protect it. Anyway, go on.
No, but yeah, just is still around that point as well. Like, you know, like they don't. my thing is like I just really hope like women of my generation will like any, God forbid, but say for example any other war battle they face in this generation, I would like them to see it through as opposed to like my grandma's generation, my mom's generation, where like they enact change but then they stop halfway and just allow us continue. I would like all of us to go through it and achieve it all together, because I feel like we'll be more like, because women will hold you more accountable for it. Like they are nurturing in nature, so like there's no how a man can corrupt a woman. Well, I mean, it's possible a man can corrupt a woman, but in like large masses.
But anyway.
Well, the thing is like, I don't think that you can, a woman's clear conscience will allow her like naturally just cheat people for the sake of cheating. Like no matter what, a woman will always.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about all.
No, I don't know about all, but like the ratio to men, like compared to men, like women
again,
are more.
Do you know why it's tough to say that? Because they've not been empowered equal.
Exactly, but so that's why we can't assume that they won't do it.
I guess at least you deserve the chance to let us down, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. At least they've had that leverage. Like us, we've had it since 1960, and we're
way before that.
I mean, but now now we are in 1851 now. Like we've gone back, we've moved on from 1960 to 1851
but
now.
Also, it's clear we're like on the same page when it comes to this discussion of having them be in the position they deserve to be at. But that doesn't exclude the fact that we have failed tremendously when put in these positions, right? And it's not just to say, because okay, now for instance, if you hand over the reins to the women in society, excellent, right?
Not necessarily
No.
That's not what I'm saying.
For the purpose, they happen to be the ones that are rightfully in power if they've earned the right to be there.
Yes.
Now, you still have a generation of men then that are still incapable of leading and whatnot. So my point being is in this. Yes, indeed, we've tried and we've failed, but what is the reason why we keep trying and failing as men in those positions? Why is it that we can't ever seem to get it right? In our context, particularly Africa, or within the context of Nigeria that we've been speaking of per se.
Because
say they've made all the hard work and they've dropped it now on our plate. Why is it that we can't get our shit together, but we expect them to be able
because
to?
we don't know what hard work is. We don't appreciate like we don't know what it is. We don't know how it is to fight for something that we truly believe. Like this, like I feel like the women made us believe nationalism was a thing. Like we didn't see the value of like we didn't join them from the start to fight for nationalism. So like when this idea of nationalism come, obviously there's going to be perks. Yeah, you're going to be perks. You'll be in charge. You have control over this, control over that, control over that. So like you're focused on that, and you're completely missing the point that this whole fight started because of nationalism. And again, it's only women that will get that because they started that. Like that's the fight that they brought in there. But us as men, we're just there to like just see, make sure everything is okay, and we fuck up like so many times in that sense. So I think that's why we don't contribute enough compared to them.
But is that too cheap? Is that just a cop out?
It's not a cop out, but it's a valuable. I mean, if I give you 1 million, right? You won't just think spending on drugs is bad because you have it. You expect somebody to give you that again. But if you work hard for your 1 million, you know that, oh shit, I need to multiply this one before. I need to make sure that I don't go through that process of making that 1 million again. I want to keep progressing. But it's just what it is. Like us men, we just keep, especially in the African context, Nigerian context, for example, we got everything in the platter of gold. I mean, I know the railway workers. I'm sure they're men, they're whatever, but I'm still sure it was still a women's revolution that like the Pelowura that inspired all that kind of stuff to come to be there. So yeah, we need to understand that everything, like most power we have in night is coming from the point of like women fought hard for us to get this power, and then now when we get that, if you're intelligent enough, you won't get intimidated by that fact. You'll be motivated. You'll be okay, alright, cool. I appreciate the fact that you made me live in a society that's made me appreciate where I'm going to, as opposed to like, oh, I'm just here, I'm not doing anything. So if we see it like that,
I think it also stems from the fact of bad leadership in terms of the selection of the leadership. We talk about fighting for independence and all that, and you guys keep quoting back all these 4 people that they kept them in a room, they went, got their Western education, came back and whatnot. That is a sign of bad leadership. I am of the point that, like in this specific context when we spoke about Nigeria, those women you raised, right, if they were the ones in the positions of these 4 men, they would have almost, you can't say for sure, but there's a high chance they would have done a better job of putting Nigerian interests first. Because from the jump, that's what they've been on. But my point being is then, those men should not have had access to that place in the first place because they never truly had the best intentions. So for me, indeed, they should be given equal platter under the guise of a meritocracy where anybody who is best fit for the role ought to get it. And if they happen to come out on top 90% of the time, then they deserve to be there 90% of the time. If they happen to be from the same tribe in Nigeria, they deserve to be there 90% of the time. It's a meritocracy under the basis of if you are the best person for the job, irrespective of your gender, your tribe, whatever it may be. It's ridiculously idealistic to say, to be honest, because everybody has their, I guess, ulterior motives. But I feel like that's where it ought to be. And if it was under the guise of a meritocracy, for sure, I feel like we'd have had a power dynamic on the continent, or at least in our country per se.
But I mean, true again. And plus, I guess we like us again not having the chance to develop ourselves, like evolve ourselves as community without the influence that white people came in there. I'm sure that aspect of I'm the man of the house, all that thing just kind of played in there because there's a huge gap. There was a huge gap, like in our evolution. We didn't get that chance when we're reaching that point of evolving as a community and all that kind of stuff. We came in contact with Lord Lugard and his allies and all that kind of stuff. So that even in a way kind of like even it stopped the mindset of the society growing up because we got caught up with all this other shit like, oh, now we need to be liberated, now we need to do this, now we need to do that, now we need to do that. There was a huge gap in there as well. So I think as well it came from that point that we didn't get the chance to like evolve. But on the aspect of revolution, the next segment that we're talking about like revolution all across Africa, and I mean I brought up the topic like I was just saying with recent times everything going on in the news now. I think from an African perspective it's very, very dope that like everybody now has, I feel like in a way most Africans have like certain level of awareness that they should have had like long time ago. Like I don't know if it's the presence of more information or access or technology or all that kind of stuff, but like everybody now is very bomber class.
Don't let him do this stuff.
Everybody's very aware of kind of like oppression that African nations are going through. And I was making a point earlier in terms of like the Congo, for example, when there was something I saw on Twitter recently that just really sparked my thought process. When we was talking about like Apple continuously like looting Congo and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it's a common knowledge, but like now I feel like with everything going on, I think stemming like the SARS protests and everything, it just makes everybody like in a way appreciate their like heritage a bit more, in a way. And as we were saying earlier before, I hope it's not a point where we just talk about it and leave it. I hope, as opposed to like talking about it and leave it, we make like active efforts towards like contributing to the developments that we want to see our continent do. So yeah, I had a question I was gonna ask. I was gonna say, what do you think is the most effective way of driving development in Africa from a diasporan point of view? Because obviously you can never fight from the African point of view because they're in a bubble surfing stuff. What's the best possible way?
So, I mean, understanding the fact that we're fighting a war on two fronts, right? We're fighting an internal battle, and they're also fighting an external battle by the external influences and forces. I think we need to be more intentful and strategic with how we go about that. So, given my own, this is an example I have, right? It might not be the best, but this is my way of thinking about it, right? So, noticing all around the world, right, in solidarity with the SARS protests, Nigerians in the diaspora were coming out to protest in different countries. However, I feel like it's ridiculous. Not that they shouldn't come out and protest. Like they should so show solidarity. But on the other hand, you can't come to the UK and protest end SARS in the UK because the UK doesn't have any jurisdiction to end SARS in Nigeria. What you should be doing in the UK protesting is protesting ways the UK is actually influencing or affecting the situation of Nigeria that would support or alleviate the issues of SARS. So if you said, okay, we are protesting in the UK, right? And in solidarity with people protesting in Nigeria, but our message is not end SARS, and our message is that deal you just signed with Nigeria, scrap it. We're not living here until you scrap that deal. Or this money you're sending to our leaders, stop it. Or this, you get what I'm saying? Like, you need to focus the attention on what the UK is actually doing. And similar in America, if you're protesting in America, focus the attention on what America is doing. Because what is the UK supposed to say if you say end SARS in Nigeria? I didn't create SARS in Nigeria. We're just going to wait until you guys are done, and we'll drive to our office and continue our normal lives. Because we know there's no reason you're going to keep staying here, since it's a superficial request. So for me, I just feel like at that level, we need to understand that the war on two fronts can't be the same. Like, you can't have the same mode of action to solve everything. Like, nah, we need to be more strategic and understand how this actual player is affecting us and what is the best strategy to actually influence or defeat those people. But that was just what I was thinking. I mean, I'm not telling, if anyone else could protest, I'm not discouraging from protesting. Just let's be more thoughtful and strategic in how we're actually protesting and what we're protesting for. So, well,
what about you? What's your advice in terms of strategic development in the modern continent during these revolutionary times?
To be honest, it runs fairly parallel with Chips's, with a couple of exceptions. When individuals are out protesting end SARS on one hand, for one, I don't necessarily see something particularly wrong with it under the guise of this. The reason why, of course, is to show solidarity, but also to find yourself somewhere in that 24-hour news cycle. You know, one thing that we know the powers that be back home are afraid of is awareness from the rest of the world and pressure from the rest of the world. We saw it when we had the Chibok girls a few years back. Nothing was done for years on end, and when it became this international campaign, action was taken. How many thousands of girls are kidnapped every year, every month in Nigeria that went completely under the radar, but that was brought to the attention because everywhere there are these pockets of protests across the world, which each of these countries' news channels are picking up and going everywhere with it. However, I feel like those efforts, even in this sense, need to be paired with exactly what it is that Chips just outlined, which is a more direct approach. So one, you're getting that press that you wanted for this particular issue, but then now you have your targeted approach. As you said, it's a war on multiple fronts that you have to be winning on all fronts, or at least be fighting on all those fronts at the same time. You can't go one after the other. You accommodate that alongside what you're doing, so that too can also end up inside that 24-hour news cycle, and you apply pressure from every aspect that you can. Then thirdly, and most importantly, if you ask me, well, not most importantly, but a key point is remittances back home. Standard of living and cost of living is ridiculously low back home relative to here. We all enjoy those things when we go back for holiday in Niger and we're splurging our life away, and then you look and you convert it like £100. It's next to nothing. But the impact that can have back home is humongous. You have people that are out there risking their lives. And you can help out by sending money back for bills, sending money back for health services on ground, sending money back, I don't know, to fund some of these security forces that help protecting protesters. And it means nothing to you because you live in the developed world, but if you send it back and you convert that, like it goes a long way. So that for me are the three things that I would say. Try your best to alleviate ignorance as well. I ended up going down to the NSARS protest that was here, and it was fun. That's the word that I will choose on purpose to describe it. Fun. And that for me is a problem. Because yes, you should enjoy the fact of being there. That solidarity aspect is fantastic. I felt good. I felt like I was a part of something bigger. However, my purpose in going there and what I was hoping I would meet was a group of aware individuals that wanted to be open to discourse. We're so far away, we can hold our placards and all. That's one thing, that's for the cameras, that's going to hit the news cycle. But us that are amongst ourselves, let's sit, let's discuss, let's think about strategies that we can help affect change, as well as let's educate each other on aspects of the issue that we're not aware of. None of that was being done. So, so doing away with ignorance, attacking the 24-hour news cycle by raising awareness on the issue at hand, as well as the larger systemic issue, and then sending as much aid that you can back home to help those that are fighting on ground. That's my approach.
See, like, you touched on the protest in Edinburgh, right? They had the protest on Sunday. The parliament was closed, right? No. Like, I mean, obviously, like, if it's in the parliament, I'm sure you get, like, some attention or whatever. But even with that, though, how did that help?
It's people.
How did that really help?
These protests aren't for these governments per se.
Okay.
A lot of them, if you look at where they're situated, right, it's outside Nigeria's high commissions, Nigerian embassies. You're trying to get as close to your sovereign land as you possibly can. You're putting pressure on every single outpost that they have. That's the aim.
Right.
There just doesn't happen to be one here. And that's normally the place where these events happen here. So it made total sense for them to be down there. I don't think it was so that they can get any highlight reels or Nicola will come out and tell them, hey guys, like that's
I thought that's what we're trying to achieve.
But for me, again, that's the issue, is because, for one, you shouldn't describe a protest as fun. Like, it shouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
Two, the fact that it does become fun is because there is no substantial engagement in the person you're protesting to at this point. Yes, we say we're protesting Nigeria, but right now we're protesting to the UK government because we're in front of the parliament, right? And the reason that is if Joe hurts me and I go tell you, yo, Joe hurt me, you're gonna be like, alright, cool, fair enough, Joe hurt me. If I'm sympathetic, I'm cool, yeah. But for me to actually get your attention in order to elevate or address the situation that Joe hurt me, I need to say, Joe hurt me and you gave him the knife. Now you're complicit in that action and you have to respond. So I feel like that's what we should be doing. Like, you can't just go with an end SARS protest. You have to say end SARS in terms of protesting UK government or any government. End SARS because you guys are funding this thing. End SARS because do you get what I'm saying? Like, that has to be the strategy behind it. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to touch on your point. I think obviously that's what you're saying is what I've always thought from the get-go about this whole protest. But I still think it very important thing more I touched on was the fact that, like, yes, okay, even though we don't have these strategic things, like, we're open. Like, we still have, like, space. Because before, if you talk about Nigeria now, it's just, oh, Nigeria is bad, blah, 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 and boom, that's it, gone. But these people now, with this protest, everybody wants to know how they can change Nigeria, which is a very different conversation compared to how we used to think before.
Who is not?
Like, I mean, like, the diasporans, Nigerians outside Nigeria, I guess. Like, now, when we the end SARS protest now is creating a platform for them to understand how they can change Nigeria. Not necessarily just talk about Nigeria from a negative point of view, how leaders are corrupt. Like, everybody wants to know how now they can contribute. And so now the protest is the first step. I actually didn't really think about it that way. I think the protest is the first step towards that. And then again, it's up to us, individuals like us, and I'm sure people who think like us in the society now, to now emphasize that narrative, and then it will have like a bigger impact. But again, initially I always thought, like, you know, why are we protesting to this government and telling them, and it just felt like to me we are reporting our government to them, and those are the ones that actually designed those systems for us to continue being like that.
I still don't stand at that point that we are out here protesting to the UK government. I don't feel like that's the
but that's what it was though.
Fun of the Scottish Parliament. Why does it matter?
Because that's where all the protests take place in Edinburgh.
Or it's a
that's literally designated area where people go and protest. No. So however, people on that point that you made, I feel the end SARS protest, it shouldn't be. I mean, it was spontaneous, so it is like this isolated issue that is attached to this monster that we're trying to attack in general. That, if you ask me, SARS is a manifestation of all the systemic issues that's wrong with Nigeria. right? So that's else when we can sit down here, we're talking about strategy to do away with it. We can say, point fingers back at these Western powers and like about how they're pulling strings and all that. But then that's us looking at the larger issue and not necessarily the SARS. Now, I don't know, I just saw this report of in the United States that they're sending a probe in to look at how some facets of the United States, some parastatals had helped fund SARS in the past and all those issues. That for me, like, yeah, go ahead and that's where exactly the example you brought up can be raised, because you see a direct line between these two spaces. Now, if we're not attacking SARS per se, and we're looking at that large systemic issue that SARS is just the head of it that we're seeing now, then fully I agree with you on that strategy, because now you can directly see the reason why Nigeria as a whole, on the systemic level, there are these issues, and we can easily point fingers at each another. But right now, SARS feels like such an internal issue, even though it's not. It seems like such an internal issue. That's why I guess it's easy for them to be so narrow in their scope, which is problematic, but hey.
I think on this one, actually, it would be good to break into the segment of SARS, because I think we never say SARS with no context. So I think SARS is our own. It's like a Nigerian version of police brutality, sort of like the Black Lives. No, it's what happened. Sort of like the Black Lives Matter. What sparked the Black Lives Matter? That's our own protest or whatever problem we're dealing with. So with the whole SARS thing going on in Nigeria, I think is police people, brutalizing citizens as a result of maybe lack of funds to actually adequately do their job or whatever. Actually, it might be a way of SARS protesting against the government for them to get paid more, because it's such a that's a
very long
No, but it's true. It's true because, like, I mean, if you're getting paid adequately to do your job, there's no how you see value in collecting 50 naira from somebody. Like, there's no how you see that, because in a way, if you're getting paid for what you deserve to be paid for, you see yourself as a respected member of the society.
And even the sorry to cut you, but even the person paying you now has a form of accountability, because I'm paying you well, so there's no way you're going to fuck up.
Exactly.
So the whole SARS movement started because they wanted to end police brutality and all that kind of stuff. But the protest now is igniting like a flame for like actual revolution in Nigeria, and everybody, as opposed to just potentially actually Africa in a whole, because Nigeria is the biggest African nation, is the largest African nation ever, and I think this can go beyond just Nigeria. But in the context of Nigeria, I think this is kind of sparking like revolution, like conversations and all that kind of stuff going on. And it's just very interesting that, again, for the first time in a very, very long time, that everybody is coming together to fight for like one cause, which is police brutality. Hopefully it leads to revolution. My thing with the whole SARS thing is, first of all, before we go into the whole thing, there's like propagandas that's been coming up online. I don't know if you guys have seen like the Benin prison break. Even though that thing happened 6 years ago, but somehow that's coming now, and they're trying to. There's like loads of deflections, right? And now I'm trying really hard not to just add a stigma to it, to say, is it the government doing the propaganda, or is it? I don't know. Well, what's your take on it?
To a large extent, like, there's been video evidence proving. Why is I know this world of fake news that we live in? But like there's a ridiculous amount of evidence on one side that goes to show that there's been, I guess, purposeful efforts by the powers that be to make these things happen. Now, for instance, if you look at the Benin prison release, and then the thugs in Lagos who are brought in on the Lagos funded like buses, like, that didn't make sense to me. But now, for instance, what's Lagos done in response to that? The protests are violent, they're this, that, we're setting a 24-hour curfew. Why is that? You're trying to lose momentum. Let's believe if they're back again, something will happen, similar cycle, trying to kill the momentum. So when you see all these things, from how clear the unofficial, official leaders of these movements have been, they made it very clear that it's peaceful, everything is well documented, everybody's phones are out, you're seeing this present. So it's hard to really trace this back to the protesters themselves. So I guess it's not for them to get caught up in the games that are being set out right now. Because the truth is, if they lose ground, and I don't know if you guys,
that's my concern.
What's going on right now, man, to come back to where we're at now is going to be near impossible.
Yeah.
Because if they get what they want, there's going to be more blocks in place to hinder this stuff happening again.
Anarchy, man.
So I don't know. What would you guys say the best approach is for the protesters now that they themselves are seeing they're consciously fighting about?
You know the thing is, like, I liked what Fowles was doing. Fowles is a musician, Nigerian musician, and I like what he's doing in a way. And I really hope people really adopt that initiative in terms of like knowing your rights as citizens, because fundamentally that's something that is really lacking like among the masses, right? When it comes to like knowing your right in order for you to actively like contribute to society. Most times we live like it's been established that we live in a democratic way. That's why these leaders have they can tell us anything, they can impose these curfews and all that kind of stuff. But if you know your rights, if you actively seek for your own rights now, it's easier for you. It's easier for you to now to fight them back without them retaliating, and makes it harder for them to keep defending against the attack of which is what's happening. I think like it's easier for them. What's my point? I lost my train of thought.
It's easier for the people protesting to be able to address the situations.
Exactly.
And they can do so with more confidence.
Yeah. Exactly
what points to target. And I agree with you 1,000%. Like what Fowles is doing again is key, because they will keep, if you're not aware of the game, they'll find ways, like things like that, like the 24-hour cup, in order to break down momentum. Like, if you're not aware of things like that, then it will be much easier for them to be able to disband this whole thing. But understanding the system that's already been in place that gives you the advantage would allow you to emphasize your rights, your strategy, and all these things more. So just looking, because watching what Fowles has been doing, like there's actually so much, not so much, but there's a lot of things we can actually be doing that they have to respond to. So targeting those things specifically actually would help keep the momentum going, because if we just lose sight and keep making it emotional should always drive, like
that's where nationalism comes from.
But you still need to be okay, even if you're willing to say, okay, don't give us this one, but we want this one, or we want this one, or we want that one, or you owe us this one and you owe us that one. It's harder for them to come up with bullshit stories like that. So yeah, fully agree with your point, man.
And leads me to my second. Go on, please.
On that note, with Fowles, another aspect of what I love that he's doing is he's breaking down these concepts into layman's terms.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. And we're seeing efforts like that. And there's some links I shared to you guys of, it's very clear, more educated members of society handing out pamphlets to, people that are less to be able to get them to be tapped in the way you mentioned, to be able to know their rights and all that. So efforts like that, those pamphlets handing out, or Fowles breaking down these larger concepts into layman's terms, like that's where we really do need to extend the hand, because the people at the forefront of these movements are people that are so tapped in, because they've been bereaved and they're very much aware that they have been. Now you need to extend that to the people that are truthfully angry themselves, but they lack the depth of understanding. There's a need to extend the hand to them to bring them up to your level.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, if you guys don't mind?
Please, go on.
With the protest now, one of the major assets that they've had is a lack of centralized leadership, because it's harder to suppress when everybody's the face of a movement versus one person that can, I guess, dull the flame from within. Then let me ask you guys, how do you ensure that mob mentality doesn't ensue while keeping the system this way? Because there's a lot of calls for them to put a leadership structure in place, but it's very clear that that's not the case. So how do you then, if we're not going to get leaders, how do you ensure that we don't just fall into mob mentality?
I think as opposed to the leaders, to me, leadership is that sole leadership is that sole leadership in a way is what made Nigeria what Nigeria is today, because it just got time back. They got a group of people to confirm that they recognize them as leaders, and eventually they use them for our own downfall. I I'm more under the notion of like the elected councils of people. Like I think people should actively put like a sort of like a council together that will kind of represent the masses as opposed to like just one leader that's answerable to everything. Like we should have a panel of people. Like just the way they're saying like I don't know if you guys saw like a proposition by I think Falls that on Channels TV or something. I was watching it like the other day, and it was saying that like every state will have like a panel that will answer that that will always document like police brutality in order for them to give like yeah. So I think for this protest that's a way. If there's so much emphasis on leadership, I think that's the best way we can go. I'm so scared that this protest will give us like one leader. Because if you have one leader, I think that it would be like the demise of the revolution we're fighting for. Because if you have that one leader, it's easy for them to just call him inside, sweet talk him, and then now everybody believes in him. He can come and calm everybody down, and that causes his fault. I don't feel like we should have one sole leader. I believe in a panel. I don't know what you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think having just one leader creates an easy target. Like that's just facts. So having an organization like a group of people coming together and taking responsibility to organize, because I feel like in this situation everybody should be a leader, because leadership is about your own like self-drive. Like whatever you're doing, you're supposed to be a leader. However, we have organizers, we have people that are channeling certain resources and certain strategies in certain directions. So having those organization groups I feel is key. I'm seeing from the SARS protest or movement, groups like the Feminist Coalition. So I don't care who started it. I don't want to see a name. Yeah. I don't want to see anything. Don't tell me who. I just know it's the Feminist Coalition doing this. I want to know certain organization doing this. Maybe the ones looking for outer healthcare. Yes. Certain organization feeding people. Just organizations going after this with clear points and agendas and accountability, but no one should come and say I started this or I
saw that the other day. By the way, there's this guy, I can't really remember his name. He even has a Wikipedia page right now. It's like he started the hashtag of and I'm just like, that's so counterproductive. Like nobody wants to hear what you're saying. Like at the end of the day, okay, great that you sparked this fire, but it's not your fight. It's everybody's fight. Like we're all fighting for something. Yeah. We're all fighting for a common goal and all that kind of stuff. In fact, actually, what's your point? I didn't even ask you. I just got carried away with my emotions. What's your point? Do you think we should have one centralized leader, or what do you think?
The thing is, we've been so let down by leadership in the past that we've thus created this stigma around it.
Yeah.
That there can be no good leaders per se.
No, there can be good leaders.
Truthfully, man, on ground in Nigeria, you don't buy anything anybody's telling you. Let's not kid ourselves.
Fact.
Right?
Fact.
And that being said,
fact.
Even in something this good and this pure, once people begin to put their head out, everyone's beginning to ask, what's your ulterior motive? So I agree with Chips in that sense that there needs to be structures in place.
Yeah.
But then, at that, structures too can become corrupt. They can become power hungry.
Unions, you were talking about that.
Checks and balances are in place for each of them to ensure that they are going to remain accountable and remain on task is the next thing. Say the Feminist Coalition is indirectly, informally nominated to lead this movement now. Who's to say that everybody within that will not begin to change their own drives behind why they're doing what they're doing? So it's that accountability. They're not elected. Nobody's put these people in these places. They happen to be goodwill, and it's shown through, and that's where they are. Files is the same. How then can we continue to count on that goodwill? What accountability we have in place? What happens if they step out of line? Are there orders in which you can put the next person in or the next group? This stuff needs to be panned out, because if we are talking full-scale revolution that you're speaking about, what are we revolting against? We're revolting against a system of bad governance and all of the above. Unaccountability. It has to start from today in the structure that you're building to create that next movement, you know? If we get what we want, we can't then start looking, okay, how are we going to start doing this? The structures have to exist in what we're building from today. People buy into that idea and join the movement accordingly.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about then this is just a funny take. Since this is your take on leadership, individuals like Sanwo-Olu walking alongside the protesters, or Yaya Bello, governor of Kogi State, saying that he wants to be the leader of SARS protests. Like, since there's none, he nominates himself. What do you think about the existing powers?
SARS?
Yeah.
Oh.
And Senator Dino Malaye now posting the times when he was on the police, like in the police station, and they shot up his G-Wagon and all this stuff. What do you guys think about existing members of society, of high society, wanting to chime into these movements?
I'm sorry, but like I'm going to.
Are they not welcome?
Yeah, I'm going to be a very biased point here. But if you've been in government in Nigeria, I don't give a fuck about opinion. I actually don't care, because you've had all the opportunity to enact change in the smallest way possible. I know it's impossible for you to change it, but you've had a chance to do something. Like someone like Dino Malaye. All he does is just show you pictures of bags of rice and all that stuff. But there's roads in Kogi State that if you drive on them, you die. Like, you literally die just from potholes and all that kind of stuff. And he's in charge of them.
No, that feeds on the Nigerian mentality. Dino Malaya has no jurisdiction in that space.
No, but
he gets 200M constituency allowance. He can build schools with it. He can buy bags of rice. He doesn't have to fix the road. That's
no. But the thing is, like, at least you can still highlight the need. Yeah. You can highlight the need for good road, because if I'm building efficient schools right now and people are dying on the road before they go to school, what is the point of the school? To be honest,
he's good at that. That's why he's gone to the level that he's at. That guy knows how to say all the right things.
No, but he's saying the right. No, again, goes back to your point. You need to judge people on merit. It's not about saying or what you're telling me or any. No, what have you done? Show me. Good for your English, but what have you actually done? Show me what you've done, and then now, if you show me what you've done, I can judge whether you're a good or a bad leader.
So they're not welcome in this?
No, absolutely not welcome, in my opinion.
The stupidity of it is, you're already in the space. We are on the street protesting because we are not government officials.
Exactly.
So you're not supposed to be on the street. You're already in the rooms. Go talk to your colleagues like in that space that you're in. So it makes no sense. So any leader I see doing that, and if people are buying it, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, because that's stupid. Like, he shouldn't be here on the street. But touching on, I wanted to touch on your point when you were brought up how to prevent an organization from becoming corrupt, like how like if we have all the leadership or people that became informal leaders. I feel like, which I feel is the problem that has been with every or most black revolution that we've seen in the last hundreds of years, is that we don't put equity into our revolution, right? So when you have these informal leaders come through, if you don't put equity, if everybody, like I said, everybody is a leader, you just have organizers. When you have all these organizations come, if you don't put equity in them, then there's no accountability that you have from them.
Indeed.
So you need to start putting equity. So if you have an organization like the Feminist Coalition, donate money to them, offer your services, offer something to them. So in that way, you have the same equitable fights with them in what you're doing. So they can't come and tell you, oh, shut up and don't ask questions. No. I mean, I'm funding this as well. So now you owe me a report of what you're doing.
Shareholder.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a shareholder. So I feel like that's the way we can prevent all these organizations from going off course or losing track or becoming corrupt.
That's a good point. Yeah. I was going to touch on the point of revolution, right? I had a question. Do you think our generation is equipped enough? Do you think our generation is equipped enough to enact the change that we're fighting for in terms of protest? How are we certain that these protests won't end up like, say, like, I don't know, like, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement that's happened now and again. Yes, there's so much light in it, but there's actually nothing, there's no law that's been passed in light to that. So how we, like, from a Nigerian point of view with this NSAS, because it's a very powerful movement and same scale as that, how, like, are you confident that our generation, like, will enact the change we want to enact? Because there's already different problems. We are highlighting social media. We are highlighting how these governors are coming in place. We are highlighting the possibilities of possible panels getting corrupt and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Are you confident that we can achieve what we want to achieve?
So I'm confident in the fact that I know we have more information, access to more information than our parents' generation did. So that gives me a bit of confidence that we can close it. However, in order for us to actually do close it, I feel like we need to be. So this protest can't go on forever. Like it's like this one protest, it can't go on forever. Like everybody has to be realistic. So the aim is before it either reaches its natural end or someone shuts it down, we need to get something, just one thing that we can build on. And we just have that mindset. There we set up 5, but we need to make sure that we get one so that by the time it comes back around, because it will come back around, then we build up on that one. But if we go from an idealistic perspective of end SARS, we're going to protest night and day, end SARS, that reduces my confidence because I know in reality this is not sustainable. So we need to make sure that in this time frame that we do have, get one thing, and then at least we have something to build on when we move forward. So that would be my answer. Or what do you think, Mo?
That was very succinct.
Without being diplomatic, say your mind.
No, that's
say your mind. Say your mind.
I'm trying not to get cancelled in Twitter.
That was over anyway.
Please rephrase the question for me.
So in our generation, right?
Do we have what?
Are you? No. It's not. Do we? Are you individually? Are you confident we can achieve what the goal we are trying to achieve in terms of? We are all agreeing that there's a revolution, right? It's not just NSAS. Evidently, that's what's happening. Are you confident that we can actually enact that change that we want to see in Nigeria? And if so, why? Actually, add plus B as well.
To be honest, that first half of it that we all know, I don't think we all know.
There's revolution.
I feel like the thought of a revolution is quite daunting for a lot of people that are out there protesting even now. Right? They would like that. Who wouldn't like that? But I feel like it's very daunting. To echo what Chib said, I feel like we do have access to all the information. No, to be honest with you, I love that, and that was gonna be I wish you let me speak.
No, you get it. That was a year.
Go on.
Genuinely, like all the tools are at disposal for us to be able to do so. So I see no reason why not. Now, I feel if structural changes are made, because although you're speaking about this larger revolution, I feel like we're only equipped to handle what we're handling right now. If you're talking full scale, like political, social, economic overhaul, a lot of structural change needs to happen within the movement. And once that is established, then honestly, with the numbers and some of the strategies I'm seeing right now, I believe so. There needs to be a lot of mobilization of the ill-informed masses that are being created by the system that we're complaining about. If that's done, and that major restructuring, as I mentioned, I see no reason why not. If I'm honest with you.
Sorry. Now let me follow up with questions, right? And actually, to both of you guys,
it's gonna be the same.
But with all these things going on, how do we make sure this doesn't turn into like Arab Spring if you go into like full effect of revolution? Because evidently, like I think now we're going with more from the point of emotions. We're tired of this shit. We want to change it, right? We're protesting against our government from all over the world, and everybody's seen exactly what's wrong with Nigeria. How do we now make sure that it doesn't turn into a full Arab Spring?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm asking you. It's a question. I'm asking. Go on.
She's gonna go first.
I'm asking you first.
Okay. As you said, Arab Spring was, to an extent, solely emotional. There was a lot of rage that came from that space.
Yeah.
However, there was a huge power vacuum that was left afterwards because of a lack of a contingency plan. So, prior to stepping into that large-scale revolution that you're speaking about, there is going to be a need there needs to be a blueprint of what it is that we're after on the other side. Look at NSARS right now. There's those 5 points that they want addressed. That's ideal.
Yeah.
the same way a presidential candidate is going to come with his full-fledged manifesto as to what he wants to achieve, is the same way there needs to be that unified voice as to what we want on the other side. So if we manage to topple the system, there's already a playbook as to how to go about it. Okay. One, right? And that, as I said, begins from day one of protesting. That system of governance that you see, what you want to establish, every element that can be usurped into the movement today needs to be usurped into the movement today. So Nigerians can already begin to feel what it is to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And when the system does come into play, it's not new to everybody. There's some people that have already been a part of it and are used to it. And to some extent, living that reality can be enough to bring other people into that reality. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Black Panthers, right? People talk about, oh, they just out here, they distributed food, they did all that stuff. It was a strategy. They're going into these communities, inner cities, that kids aren't getting breakfast in the morning, people don't have access to healthcare. I was like, come, we will provide you with this, we will provide you with that. But if you sit and you have this meal with us, let's now explain to you the tactics that have enabled us to do this. And people buy into it from there. That's one, right? I've completely lost my chain. I thought I had the second half. So the first was running on emotion in that space. And then two is an awareness, truthfully, of, I guess, the beast that you're fighting against. So there's internal and external, right? And to prevent that from happening, a huge reason why the Arab Spring is exactly how it is right now is because of a ridiculous amount of Western influence.
Yeah.
A ridiculous amount of it, right? If you look at Libya, they hated Gaddafi for years. They got the perfect chance to do so. Needed reason to topple Egypt. All of them. There was a ridiculous amount of influence from the West. So it needs to be our movement. It needs to be our movement. And even if we have some shrewd enough individuals that can, I guess, if you're wanting some Western, I guess, financial backing or whatever, you need to be shrewd enough to be able to either not owe them after and be able to stand up to that point, or to be smart enough to negotiate things that work, or don't do it at all. Because it has to be ours and ours alone. Once they begin to meddle, there's owing them this. They know how the system works. They know how our actors are, and they know our buttons to press. So as I said, those two things mainly.
Finish your point. No, finish your point. Okay, to add on a point, sorry, before you answer it, right? I'm coming from the angle of, okay, the Arab Spring, right? It was evident that the West had problem with the leaders. Like, they had a problem with us, so it was easier for them to create a revolution or whatever, to disband them. However, with us are puppets. Like, these are the leaders that effectively they put in place to continue to make their system thrive, right? So obviously, if we achieve, you guys are in agreement that we'll achieve this revolution. If we achieve them, we are somehow disrupting the balance of the system they put in place. How are we now sure that it wouldn't come in place again?
That's the point, right? So on one hand, they're going to, on the onset, there's two battles that are being fought. And by default, as you said, there's a system that works for them. Best believe the US ambassador is going to be living inside Aso Villa. That partnership is going to be what you're up against. However, if they begin to see a turn of the tide and that these people that they've been counting on are not of any use to them anymore, there's no love lost. There's no like, I guess, intrinsic love they have for these individuals. They can look for the next best deal. And if it's the three of us that are making this movement happen, if the step is, let's see if we can come and infiltrate one of them to betray this and to do that, and we'll fund this person, give them all this access, and then they're going to be the face of it, and they're a new puppet, or none of us are willing to, can we take them out? Do you get my point? Like, you just have to be hyper aware in that space. But nonetheless, you have something to say.
No, I mean, you flipped it on me, so I completely agree with everything you said.
Oh wow! Wow!
I just wanted to, but I mean, you've pretty much touched on it. I was going to ask, so what? I mean, you've touched on the two: having a contingency plan, maintaining ownership of the movement. I was going to ask what other restructuring do you feel the movement had to do? I mean, but these two are pretty big ones, so if you don't have any, that's fine. But that was going to be my question, like, because you mentioned before we need to restructure it, so that was going to be my question.
Nah, but I mean, on that note of NSAS, man, I think we're going to wrap it up. It's been a great conversation, and honestly, like, side note before we end it, man, I was going to say, like, our generation, we need to just continue pushing for it, man. And we don't have any excuse because we have more, in fact, we even have more information than the railway people that put Nigeria on the standstill. So if they can do that, we need to top theirs like 10-3. And the way we are going, I love the way we are going. I just hope we just don't lose focus and, you know.
If I may, before you shut it down, the reason why, and if they can blast this section in every single protest, keep going, keep striving, don't lose momentum, because one victory like this can be the domino effect of what we're after. We live in this generation, the last one, the one before, have never had a victory against such a formidable opponent in the system that exists, right? And this one thing, you may look small on the grand scale of things, but if you manage to overcome this in that you've come together and your movement has caused some positive change in your life, best believe when you're looking for the grander scale ones, you're going to look and be like, we mobilized and we made that shit happen. So there's no reason why it can't happen now. And this small victory, wallahi, baba, it can be a huge domino effect, man. So wallahi, whoever's out there, man, keep it up.
And you know what I was going to say again, like, as young Nigerian youth, right? Like, we shouldn't give up so on the fact that, like, by now, I feel like we should be aware of how the government use tactics to, like, de-escalate situations. In the day of elections, time and time again, they'll tell you there's corruption during election, all that kind of stuff. And then everybody and then everybody goes under this notion that, you know, I'm not going to fight anyway because my vote doesn't count. And that's how you keep having bad leaders, right? So now, evidently, this is what exactly is happening now. They're trying to shut down their coffee here. Don't get frustrated by this it's just the same thing that they're doing, like, but just from a different angle. Yes, okay, they'll do the coffee, but that coffee, you can't continue it because they'll lose so much money that they don't even have. So when they stop that thing, you just continue.
You see that start about Lekki
Yeah, guys.
That thing blew my mind. See money, man.
That's wild.
Somebody said, correction, Lagos isn't losing, Tinubu is losing.
Guys, guys, you order that coffee now. Lock Lagos. Let's find out what's going on. Lock Lagos.
They won't make any progress. Shut this shit down.
So yeah, man. But on that note, man, peace out, man. Watch out for next episode.
Thanks for having us.
Man.